Okay, it is Monday, April 1st, commonly referred to as April Fool's Day. Class is starting today. It's not an April Fool's joke. And I like it when it starts on a Monday because then we have your full weeks that we go through. As you know, this is a 5.5 class. And actually, I'll just tell you up front, this class ends on May 7th. May 7th. So you want to keep up with the pace. I am very excited about teaching this class. I haven't taught it in a while, but constitutional law is very important to me, and my degree is in political science. And then, of course, when I was in law school, studied constitutional law, among other things. So so I'm very, 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 very excited about that, and I think that you're going to discover some very interesting discussions. And so what tonight we're going to do primarily is we're going to go over the expectations for the course. I'm going to introduce you to the rubrics, the importance of rubrics. I'll say from the very beginning, rubrics are critical in making sure that you maximize your assignments. Also, you probably already discovered, I emailed each of you copies of the PowerPoints for this week. I will do that every week at the beginning of the week, probably usually Saturday or Sunday before that. And I won't really use those too much in class, but I may use some parts of it. I mean, and the PowerPoints are really good to help you with studying the module itself. I also provided to you some information that is, it has a lot of information on it. It has some instructions to me as well, but I gave you the whole thing, and it's not, I'm not overloading you. I'm just supplying you with information that will help you if you want to know more details. It's not required to even use those PowerPoints, but I do recommend them. And that other information that I sent you is a Word document that you can use also to see the outline of the topics and the lesson and all of that. So it's, with this being a 5.5 course, to help you as much with information up front and to be able to navigate these next 5.5 weeks that will be so fast that it'll make your head spin. So just stick with me, keep your assignments up. So let's get right into sharing my screen. Okay, let's go right here. Okay, I don't want to blow that up. I don't want that big. Let's see if I can make this smaller again. I don't want this big. I don't know why. Yeah, let's make it smaller. There we go. Okay. And then I just want to move it over a little bit there. Oh, it just wants to keep growing. Make it smaller again. Get out of here with this thing. Okay, make it smaller. And then let's move it. Okay, now, there we go. All right, so you will see at the beginning the course home page. It says course home. And with the course home, there's some very important information on here. And if you become familiar with what's on the course home, it will help you to recognize and appreciate the requirements that I set out for you for your assignments. First bit of information is the instructor box information, where you see my little mug shot there, me in a suit and tie. And you see my name, And you see that phone number there, 630-660-8480. And you will see a statement under that. And I want you to pay close attention to that statement. I'm going to read it to you and then make sure that you don't miss it. Students can feel free to call me, comma, text me, comma, or email me any hour of the day, comma, except the 25th hour of the day. Now, you figure that one out. You figure that one out. Now, when you text me, please include your name and please include what course you're in, because I have nearly 100 students, and so I can know what to look for. And then, of course, when you email me, use the course mail, which says on the left, course messages. Students should know to use that. And then you can send me a course message. Now, you can use the other, but this is the best because it's intended for you to deal with materials that are information or concerns in the course. So it's very important that you understand that. It is not a joke that I'm saying. It's funny that I say it to draw your attention. That's why I put 25th in bold, because as you know, you never reach that. So you figure it out from there. And then the other thing, notice that I highlighted, is rubrics. I try to tell students all the time in the course that if you want to maximize your grades, please, please use the rubrics as a checklist to help you to complete your assignments. And the rubrics line up with the module as well, but it has some little different information. But the rubrics will really help you, because when I submit grades, I'm going to do it based upon the points of the rubric. I'm going to give you comments about it that will tell you what you did wrong. APA. APA is so critical. It is critical for academic integrity. And matter of fact, I posted an academic integrity announcement today that I invited you to take a look at a video, but we're going to take time to look at that video. I'm going to try to access that video for you during this session. I think I'll probably have to take off my my headset for you to see the video and hear what it said, but then I'll put them back on. But rubrics are important, and APA. APA, if you have problems, there are resources in this course. You see it right here on the left side. Right here. There's some over here, but there is some information, and it tells you guides, APA. And if you click on it, APA is very, very, very important. You'll lose 5 points if you don't follow the guidelines and requirements of APA. You will lose 5 points if you don't provide citations and references. If you provide citations, you're still going to lose 5 points. APA requirements must all be satisfied. I don't grade students on the effort to provide some of it and let you know you're partially right. The reason being is because it is so essential at APA. It is a requirement of this course. It is in your syllabus as well when we go over that in a few minutes. So you'll see that. And then critical thinking is very important. You should be able to express yourself in your papers, not just copying and pasting, but provide not only the APA requirements, a cover page, 12-point Roman, and also the proper citations in the body and your references. So your citations and references should match. You can use references more than once in the paper as a citation, use at least once. And if you have 3 citations in the body, you can have 3 citations and 1 source. That's fine, but you cannot have 3 references and 1 citation. because then you need to use those citations in the body, because citations provide information to the reader as to the source of the information that you utilize to provide the statements. And you don't want to get caught in plagiarism, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. And to help you with that, there is a system that we use called Grammarly. Grammarly. If you are not familiar with Grammarly, there you go under your Resources tab and click on it. Give me a minute, I'll do that for you. And it will tell you right here. See, it says APA as well, APA Guide. And it also tells you Grammarly. And it's for grammar, spelling, and plagiarism checker. So you want to run your papers. I run all of my papers through Grammarly for your information. And if your percentage is so high, above 25%, which is very liberal, then you lose points for that. And then also, I have to, if you go too high, I report it to the dean. And so it's important that you understand how to do that. It is very, 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 very important, because we want to know what your brain has and how you have taken the issues and converted them to some thought processes and provided information concerning that. So anyway, that's found on your resource tab, among other things there as well. And if you go back to again, you will see too that the academic integrity video that I have on the course homepage is also included there as well, and why it is and what it's all about. So you can find it there. But we're going to cover that in just a few minutes. So stick tight with that. So then I provide, under the additional course information, the same statements that I made. Now, I will say this one. Now, in your syllabus, it says no textbook, but you are aware of the fact that there is a textbook called Constitutional Law, and that you should have received your digital version of it through your student link for a textbook. If you have not, you should reach out to your advisor and let them know. But you should have access to that so that you can do the reading that is required. Of course, the PowerPoints coincide with the reading, and we'll talk about just a minute about what that is for this week. If you do a research paper or a paper that you write, and you use just the textbook, because we want you to see the textbook is a starting point, but we want you to get accustomed to research, because that's one of the powerful things that you're going to need to carry over into your professional career. And so if you just use the textbook, because some students says, well, why do I have to research if I got the textbook? The textbook is a guide to help you to understand the subject matter, but you will learn by conducting research about how it actually is viewed by various credible resources. While I'm on it, I'm going to say this right now. Never, never use Wikipedia. I was talking to someone about that today. Wikipedia is a very unreliable source. It is a word-based website. What that means is anybody can change information. So we don't consider in the academic sphere that to be a credible resource. So we want to make sure you have credible resources. The Library and Learning Center has quite a few, and each school, in the School of Justice Studies, has information that they've provided for you to be able to make sure, and all those sources in there are credible. And also, I told you about APA, and then you will also lose a point, because part of APA is making sure that you have a cover sheet. Now, make sure your cover sheet is proper. Again, there's a resource called NoodleBib that also helps you with that, and APA helps you with the cover sheet, and make sure you do it correctly. And then these are some helpful resources that I'm not going to go over. I already told you about some of them, so you can click on them at your leisure. Tutoring. Tutoring is very important in school. It is not just for people who are in trouble. Tutoring is also something that can help you sharpen your skills. We have been fortunate enough at this college to have what we call our student tutors. These are classmates of yours, and some of them are in classes right now that I teach, and I have a couple. And these are students who have performed well in school, and their grade point average is high, and they also are familiar with the assignments. Now, they're not going to help you do your assignments, because that's a violation. But what they will do is they will help you to understand the processes for making sure that you particularly deal with Grammarly, and especially especially trained in APA. And so if I see that you're having a problem, I will refer you to a tutor and have them to help you. And then this tells you how to connect with a tutor. And also there's peer assistance. These are individuals, again, they're not tutors, but they're to give you some support. And then these are some articles that I provided to help you as well. And I'm a person who provides plenty of resources for my students. They're not required resources, but they're resources that will help you to be successful in completing your assignments and obtaining the optimal grade that you can get in terms of assignments. Maximize your investment, or it says return on your investment, a high yield. And it goes to various topics. Annotated bibliography, you don't have to worry about that too much. This is a critical thinking video. If you copy and paste this to your browser, you can take time to look at this video on your own as well. And then that brings me to rubrics. Now, on the home page, you will find the rubric. So for this week's the written assignment, the preamble, it tells you how it's balanced out. It's 40 points for doing this, 30 points for doing that. Then the next 5 points are for making sure that you have the right number of pages. Where you're going to find that? You're going to find that in the module. It will tell you what that is. Spelling and grammar and things like that we check out. And then also grammar, APA, and organization, and required page count. So it's kind of in there as well. But primarily in here, the 5 points is for APA. APA, that's where we're going to deal with these. And I told you already about that. Each week, you have that for a written assignment. All right. Going down to course projects. This week, week 1, you do not have a course project. Now, if you pay close attention to the course project, each week what you do is going to be utilized when you get to your final project. So for week 2, I'm going to reserve that because next week we'll talk about that. But there is no course project this week. We'll talk about that in detail, though. I'll, a little bit here. I'm going to explain it to you. So you notice you'll have it week 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. So week 1 is the only one. Well, week 6 is when you turn in your final. And if you notice what happens in week 6, just showing you, then your week 2 assignment is included in there. And then notice that your week 3 assignment is kind of helpful in terms of completing that second issue, relevant case law, and then recent related case. Notice that. If you go back, you'll see current topics in there. And then finally, week 5 is the interview, and then you will have the interview of a local law enforcement professional. So that you will pretty much, so you'll include that in your paper. And what I usually try to tell people is set up a topic, a caption, to separate it so that there's a section for each of these. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And then you satisfy the page requirements and APA as well. So finally on this side, reminding you, this is how I'll tell those of you who are here already, because you already know this. That's why you're able to find me. You can copy and paste this link. You'll find it here. You'll find it in your announcements. You'll also find it on the course calendar as well, what the link is to get to. And as I tell people, when you get ready to see the video, if you come to this link, I won't be there. You know what it's like? It's like if you were in class at 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock on 8:30 on tonight, and we were in a physical room, and then we left, and then you came at 11 o'clock. Well, we're not going to be there. But if there was a recording that took place, then we'd provide you with a link to that recording. It's the same thing here. And then I have this interesting thing that I do to help my students, and it's beneficial, and many students are happy about it. You will see throughout the quarter times when they say there's issues about accessing lectures through WebEx because they're doing some maintenance or something like that. There's one coming up, I think it's next weekend, and it's usually a Saturday. Well, it doesn't affect my classes, and the reason why it doesn't is because as soon as I finish the lecture, which I'll do tonight, and it takes a little bit, I actually convert my lectures into MP4s and then upload them to YouTube, and then I email you a link, the link as well as under recordings, I'll say open house week 1 lecture, and then there'll be a link that you can access it for. And that way you can use it on any kind of place. You don't have to worry about WebEx and the issue. And so you will see that. So tonight's lecture, open house, is going to go, I said 10:30, I mean 10 o'clock. So it's not going to be 2 hours. It's going to be an hour and a half. So that's a typo. Let's fix that right now. Okay, 10 o'clock. Okay, so let's submit. So now, when I look down here, it should say 10 o'clock. Let's go down there and see. Yep, so it's 90 minutes. Normally, your lectures for week, now pay attention to this very carefully. Weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5 will take place on Mondays, 8:30 to 9:30. So that begins next Monday. But when you get to week 6, your week 6 lecture will take place actually in week 5, but it will take place on Friday, May 3rd, 8:30 to 9:30. And the reason why I'm doing that is because the following week, if I did it on Monday, I'll give you a lecture the day before the course ends, and that's not fair. And so I want to be able to cover the information adequately. And that's a sacrifice for me because I'll be celebrating my birthday with you guys. That's my 69th birthday. So we'll celebrate it with spending some time together for at least an hour or so. My wife will figure out something to do around that. But you must attend the live lecture or listen to the archive. Unfortunately, too many students don't come to the live lecture. It is beneficial to them, but it is for various reasons. Some work at night. You know, why do I do them in the evening? Because many of my students I work during the day. So if I do them during the day, Then my students who work at night will say, I can't do it because I'm resting, or I have maybe another job or something. There are students who have more than one job, or they have, parenting things and various and sundry items. So it is better to do it late in the evening, and also I have fewer interruptions in the evening as well. But it is important that you provide me whatever that keyword I give you, and I may give it in the middle of the lecture, the end of the lecture, but I make sure that you do know what it is for sure by the end of the lecture. I have had students, and I could tell that they did this, that they don't listen to the lecture. They go through and they just look for the keyword, shaking my head left to right. Not beneficial to you. It is important that you understand within this 5.5-week period that you need as much input from me as possible to help you so that I can navigate you through it. I can navigate you better if you listen to my lectures, if you reach out to me as soon as you have a problem. And we'll talk about that more in detail later, because I work with students a whole lot. And so anyway, I will keep attendance and know who's actually giving me the keyword or not. You get 5 points for that. You'll see that in the criteria that we are going to come up to. Okay. So now, excuse me, I want to go right now to this academic integrity announcement, and I want to put this in here. I'm going to copy it and paste it. So I'm going to open up another browser. Okay, and you should be able to see this. So I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to unplug this. Hit enter, and you should be able to hear this. It's 4 minutes. No, 4 minutes.
What is academic integrity? Academic integrity is making decisions in your academic life that are based on honesty, trust, fairness, responsibility, and respect. This means being honest in the work you do, while respecting the work that others do. So what is cheating? Cheating means distributing or receiving answers or information by any means other than those expressly permitted by an assignment's requirements or an instructor. Some examples of cheating include asking fellow students for answers or copying answers during a test, using notes, devices, or materials during the test that your instructor has not approved, purchasing papers from websites or other sources, copying your classmates' work, assisting a classmate in misconduct, and other violations as noted in the academic integrity policy that can be found in all course syllabi. Always ask your professor if it's okay to use notes during the test or to work together with classmates on an assignment or quiz. Now let's talk about plagiarism. Plagiarism means using another individual's work without giving them credit or taking another person's work and claiming it as your work. Some examples of plagiarism are turning in an assignment that someone else wrote, copying words or ideas from someone else. This can be a library resource, course textbook, internet resource, or other material without giving the original creator credit, failing to put quoted works in quotation marks, or using someone else's ideas in your essays, but changing a few of the words to make it sound like the words are your own. Plagiarism is not just about written words and ideas. It's possible to plagiarize images, graphs, coding, or video as well. So how can you avoid plagiarism? Cite your sources, both in the body of your paper as in-text citations and on your references page. Whenever you want to use words, images, media, or ideas that were created by another person, you should cite that person appropriately as the source of that information.
But how does academic integrity relate to the work world? Isn't it just a college thing?
No. Integrity in the workplace starts with good practices and skills built while you are a student. Would you turn in a project document to your manager as your own when someone else wrote it? Not if you want to keep your job. Individuals can be reprimanded or even fired from their job for plagiarism. Following academic integrity guidelines while you are in school builds those skills and ethical practices that carry through to the workforce.
Okay, I understand how they're connected, but what do I do if I need more help?
If you have questions on the academic integrity policy, consult your course syllabus, talk with your instructor or dean, and if you need assistance with APA citation style or how to avoid plagiarism, contact the Rasmussen library team through our live chat or schedule a research appointment on our library website or through the resources tab of your course. If you would like APA tutoring, schedule an appointment with one of our peer tutors on the course resources tab.
Okay. Whoops. I closed down the wrong one. Let me open it back up. Give me a minute. Let me get back to it. Okay. Okay, there it is. Okay, so now let me put my headset back in. Okay, it should.
Okay. You should be able to hear me. If you can't hear me, type in the chat box that you can't hear me, but you should be able to hear me. I think I see. Yeah, I can see that you are able to hear me now. Okay. So that's the academic integrity announcement. Again, it's right here for you, and it is also under the resources tab as I shared with you earlier. And then there's information about the writing process as well, which you can click more, and you can access that. All right. And then APA, which I've already talked about, is another way to access that information as well. So you want to be able to get that information and do it. So now let's go over the announcements for the week. I covered one already. This is your welcome announcement, which you all should have received first, welcoming you to the quarter, telling you a little bit about me. Pay close attention to these highlighted items. You discover and you see that announcements. Read it. Take time to read this if you haven't already. Introduce yourself in the student lounge. Those of you who have seen my post telling about myself. And so reply there. I want to know something about you. After week one, we won't be dealing with the student lounge, but it is something to give you communication. And then you also, everybody in class sees that. So it's open to, let me say, the class public. Then I already told you about your course mail for personal communications. And then please reply to my welcome message, which many of you already have done. Then we're going to go over the syllabus. Now I'm going to talk about that. You already heard some discussion about the syllabus in the academic integrity video, and they refer to academic integrity, and we're going to go over that, and we're going to discuss some of the things. We're not going to go through everything. Particularly, we're going to discuss the late assignment submission policy, and I'm also going to provide you with expectations about what you should or should not ask me regarding getting a certain grade in this course. Your calendar, your course calendar can be assessed very simply by going to one of two places. It says calendar up here, so you should be able to click on that. We'll do that later. General course questions, that's found under the discussion portion, and with the discussion portion, you want to make sure that and general course questions, anybody can answer them. I can answer them, but don't put things that you don't want everybody to see. If you want to have a specific question, you know the methods I gave you earlier as to how to communicate with me so that it doesn't go through to everybody. But these course questions are things that I can answer or you can answer. Then the resources tab, I've already shared that with you. The report tab is something that I don't use. It's for you to check your grades. I had a student one time says, well, I don't check my grades. Why not? Every week you should check your grades so you can see how you're doing. All right? And then these are some other guidelines and links that will help you as well. And then this is the reminder that our live lectures are every day, Monday between 8:30 and 9:30, beginning today, but you know already that today's is 10 o'clock. Okay, and then it gives the link again. All right. So we suggested that you click on the lessons tab and then the getting started folder so you can see some things, and you can print the syllabus as well as other important information. And then anytime you have technical problems, people, I'm not the first course of reaching out to PSC or personal support. Their phone number is here, and they're available 24/7, 365 days, even on holidays. And or you can also go all the way down while I scroll down here. You see it down here at the bottom as well. On every page of the Learn Classroom, you will be able to see that. So if you can't say, oh, I didn't see it up there. So that's it. So now let's look at, let's close that down. Now this will be up here for most of the quarter, so you'll be able to refer to it back and forth. All right, so now let's go to week 1 announcement. And let's make sure we got everything. Okay, so now let's open it up. So this week's topic is Foundations of Constitutional Law. Again, I will not go into it in detail because today is more of an open house. I'll just touch on how you can be brought up to speed. But your textbook requires chapters 1 through 3 to be read. And then there's the activity that you do look at about the Constitution and Supreme Court, which we will go over in a few minutes. And then I stress that all assignments should be completed in a timely fashion. You will note that all assignments have a due date, and you will find that on your calendar. And then once you click on your assignment, you'll see that too. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. And then again, here's the link to get to the lecture. Then I remind you that this course has, this is different from other courses you might have taken. This course, with the exception of 1 week or 2 weeks, I think, has 2 discussion assignments, which means you're going to do an initial post for the topic Exploring Judicial Review, which will be due by tomorrow night at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you're going to do an initial post on the important amendment. This is a departure from many of the classes that you take. And in kind, you will do a reply post for each of these that will be due Saturday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And please, with your post, as you'll see when we get to the syllabus, will help me to speed through it by saying this in this announcement. Your syllabus should be, your discussion post should be detailed, not good post, nice job, I enjoyed your post, I like your post, I agree. No, elaborate. Give me some substance. And then also, I also don't require citations in discussion posts. Some do, but I don't. And references, but I do let you know that I do appreciate that. And then I also encourage you to reply to as many posts as you can. All right. And so we're going to talk about the deadlines for posts when we get to the syllabus. But anyway, that's the assignment for this week. Each week it will be highlighted what the topics are, and then the deadlines are the same until we get to week 6. All right. Finally, the written assignment, the preamble, which I've already shared with you right here. There it is over on the right, your Module 1 scoring rubric. And make sure that you get that assignment in by this Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, I stress again, the requirements are found in the classroom, under the Lessons tab, and the rubric, under rubric. And actually, you might find it under Lessons tab and Assignments tab. And then this is a reminder about today, and telling you it'll last an hour and a half. And there we go again with the link. And then I have this at the bottom of every one of my main announcements: start strong and finish strong. Remember, it's only 5.5 weeks. And my motto, adversity is a springboard to success, is the key. And at the end of this, I'll share with you why that is and what that is all about. Okay? Today, I won't ask for a lot of questions until the end because we have a lot of information to cover. So, but normally I will. All right, so now let's get to what I want to do next is let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Let's get to the calendar, and then we'll come back. Okay, now this is how I assess the calendar, but you can assess it at the top. And your course calendar, and usually when I click on this, it might have more than one there. It actually, yeah, there it is, right there. So it tells you your assignment. See, it tells you where we are today. Now, you see, say, professor, there's not much information. Yes, it is. If you left click on this, it'll open it up, and it elaborates on what I said earlier. And then there. Okay? So it's not just a little guideline. And then your initial posts, which I tell you for each of those topics, are due Tuesdays. And then you will also see, so I see when you get to when you get to week 3, there's only one initial post. But weeks 4, weeks 5, weeks 4 and 5, let's see, weeks 1, let's see, week 3, and I think week 6. And the reason why is because you have your final exams and midterm exams. That's why. So you'll have just one. But anyway, let's stick with the script here where we are and what we hear. So that's for this week. And then your written assignment. Now, you see these check marks and these little things next to it? This is a reminder to you. It's due at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time on the 7th, which is Sunday. And then it reminds you, too, that your live lecture, let's see, it should be, yeah, your live lecture. So your points that you're going to need to submit will be due by 11:59 p.m. Sunday. You can do them before that. You can do them right after this. those of you who are in here, you can do it right after that, and you have it. But the point of the matter is that when you look at the recording, then you'll have at least until Sunday. Now, be aware it's going to start with 5 points. So if you submit it, the right word, that's all you got to say. You don't even have to write a whole lot, just the right word or phrase. And you put it in the Dropbox under assignments. You'll see it the same way. And then it'll record in my it'll record in my book, and then I'll look at it and see if it's right, and if so, I'll give you your 5 points. If you don't get it right, you don't get any points. If you submit it on Monday, you're going to get that following Monday, which is the 8th, you're going to get 4 points. If you submit it on Tuesday, you're going to get 3 points. And you see all the way down until you get to 0 points. So what's your idea is to get it in on time, okay? And then we'll start with that following week. And that's how it works. Then in your calendar, goes all the way down until you get to, this is week 6. I'm not going to elaborate on it, but you'll see what I told you. It says that the quarter ends. I have students sometimes that say, I was not aware. Yeah, you are. In my class, you are, because I tell you almost every week, I remind you that the quarter ends. And if you click on this one, it should say it. See? There it is, right there in front of you. So, and then you'll see that also in the announcements when you get there. So I was kind of jumping ahead on that. All right. So now, let's go away from this, and now let's go to the syllabus. And we'll spend time on the syllabus before we get to the module and then, the requirements here. Okay, so now, notice the syllabus, and we encourage you to pay attention. All students don't even look at it, but you need to, because it gives you information that's necessary, and then it tells you something that I already told you. I remind you again, it's in the syllabus, and there's 2 places in the syllabus, and it's a little description of the course. Now, it says no textbook required, but we already know that that's not true. I can't fix that. I've already suggested to them they need to fix that because there is a textbook that you are aware of. So then your course requirements is a 6-week course, and that so check your course announcement. It says at least 3 times a week. I check mine 2 times a day, in the morning, in the evening. Sometimes I even check them in the afternoon. But make sure you complete all the assignments in a timely fashion. Participate in the discussions, as I already kind of discussed, but we're going to go in more detail in a minute. And then check your course announcements. I do also remind you to check your course mail as well. Now, with discussions, I already told you this, so I'm not going to repeat this about the details that are necessary in discussion posts, okay? So I'm not going to talk about the content of it. And then, I've already talked about dealing with APA, and it tells you what APA stands for here, American Psychological Association. And it explains it's a college policy, and it helps you as we've discussed already. So now the requirements in this course are reading, discussion assignments, written assignments, course project, which is also written assignments, a midterm, which will be in week 3, which will consist of 15 multiple choice and true-false questions, and we'll cover the first 3 modules, okay? Very important. And then you have a final exam during week 6. Will consist of 19 true-false and short answers and 6 short answer questions. And the final is comprehensive. What does that mean? It covers all of the stuff, okay? So you are expected to attend, and I already talked about the live lectures. So now let's look at the criteria for grading. So for discussions, you get 550 points, or 31.1 points, okay? Written assignments, you get 480. Now remember, written assignments is not the same as course projects. So basically, it's really 980 points for both of them combined. But you see the percentages are very well. This course is well balanced. I like this. Your live lectures, you get 60 points. And so the way you get your 60 points, oh, I see. I think they have 10 points. They might have 10 points. I didn't look at that. Okay, if it's 10 points, then it'll be 10 points. Most of the live lectures, but this is a, I forgot, this is a class that is used as a plus class. So it's probably, it's a capstone, not capstone, it is a, let me go back, online plus course, which the others are, but many of you are in the bachelor program that are taking this course, so that's why. Okay, so then it's 10 points. So it has to be 10 points because 60 points altogether. It's 10 points for each week. So what does that mean? That means each day that you can lose 2 points, not 1 point. So you can lose. So if you do it on Sunday, it's 10 and you give it right. If you do it Monday, 8, and on down the line. So it's almost the same, but you know what I'm talking about. Your exams are 180 points, and then your total is 1770 for 100%. Now, here's what I want to say to you. My goal is to get you to A and B section, from A to B minus. I'm going to say this only once, and if I do, a person asks me again, I'm going to say refer back to what I said in the open house. Listen, I am not going to answer your question if you reach out to me and say, Professor, what can I do in this class to get a C? I'm not going to answer you. The reason being is because I don't encourage C students. I encourage A and B students for 2 reasons. Number 1, you get your GPA higher, but number 2, it demonstrates that you're actually completing the assignments and following closely the requirements of the assignment and satisfying them with the rubric and what's in the module. And you're doing it on a timely basis. So, and thirdly, the last thing, which is important, is of course you're developing something that some employers will ask, what's your GPA? And so you're investing in your future as well. So that's the answer to that. So don't even barely ask me about C, and definitely don't ask me about D or F. That's all I am going to say about that. I am very staunch about that and very important about it. So there's some other things here I'm not going to go over with you. And then this just tells me what I'm going to be doing, trying to get all grades, including discussions by Friday midnight after the assignment is due. So here's the deal. By Monday after week 1, which will be the 8th, I will start, and I will start sometime before that, but I will begin to grade assignments. And not necessarily, and then discussion posts and those kind of things. But I will try to have, and that's my goal, is always to have your grades in by midnight Friday night for the week before. Now, there are students who say, well, can I get it before that because I start my assignments for the following week? Well, I have so many students, but my goal is to this quarter, and sometimes I fall behind, but I'm making a concerted effort to get this done. And so your grades, because other students say, well, it takes a week for me to get my grades. Well, yeah, that's when I'm a little bit behind. But I'm going to, like I said, try to hold up my end of the deal and get you your grades for that following week, for that previous week by that Friday. So by way of example, what does that mean? That means that by the Friday let me look at my calendar here. By Friday the 12th of April, midnight now, listen to me. So it's heading towards Saturday, that I should have your grades for week 1 done. That's the way it works, okay? And that's the way it operates. Okay, so now let's talk about something that's really important that this college emphasizes, and I always remind my students about it, is that we have identified what we call transferable skills. How do we get these transferable skills? Employers have identified those as the kind of people that they're looking for who are proficient in these skills. Number one, and it's not necessarily in this order that we talk about, is communication. Communication is essential, and that communication involves written and oral communication. You're going to be able to have to be able to communicate with people from all backgrounds, which will take me to another transferable skill in a minute. But it is important that you be proficient at your grammar, and you also are able to orally express yourself. Now, there are people who have different languages that you may not understand, but you'll get some help with that. I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I always say, se habla poquito en español. What I just said, I speak a little Spanish, and I can pick and communicate, but I'll use my body language sometime and all that. But communication, a good communicator is essential. Critical thinking, I talked about that already. Being able to take issues and be able to own them, and to be able to conduct your research and information and match it up to deal with the issues that are requested in the assignment. And we want you not just to copy and paste stuff, because the way that you lower your Grammarly percentage is with critical thinking. And at the stage that you guys already should be very, very, very familiar with critical thinking and how important it is, all right? Because many of you, as I said, are heading towards your bachelor's. Digital fluency. Well, your textbook is digital, and we're in a society where we use technology, we use all kinds of resources, and so digital fluency, because you're going to be required to use things like Excel, Word. You're going to be required to use textbooks. I appreciate digital fluency as far as when it comes to textbooks, because when I came out of school, we had the old-fashioned hardcover books, and I had armloads of books that I had to carry around. Well, here with digital fluency, I actually have my books in an app on my phone called Bookshelf, and I can access my title like right here. If you can, I don't know if you can see it that good, but this is the textbook, and I can see the textbook for this course as well as other courses. And I can scroll down. I have it also on my Android. I'm an Android person. Some people are Apple people, but I'm not. And so digital fluency is important, being able to utilize those systems. Diversity and teamwork. You have to be able to respect individuals, recognizing that people are different cultures, different ethnic groups, different religious beliefs, different sexual persuasions, and you should respect those individuals. You shouldn't be name calling. Never, as I tell especially law enforcement, and I've seen it, they have to cuss at a suspect. I don't roll like that because it's disrespectful. Remember, it says, well, I don't care if the person is a mass murderer. I don't care if they killed a police officer. Now, I'm not insensitive to that, but when the police officers are questioning that person, they have to be professional in what they're doing and recognize that. But we are in a diverse society. Our country is made up of immigrants, people from all over the world, and again, respecting those cultures as well. And we at this college are very, very, very much on top of that. We have a special committee that I was involved for a while, but I've gotten so busy it's hard for me to get to it. Diversity and inclusion, so that we learn about diversity. It is a good thing to know, so that everybody is entitled to respect. That's the bottom line there. And you shouldn't be racist, shouldn't be sexist, shouldn't be homophobic, or any of those kind of things. Diversity is what we stand for. And in your classes, particularly you deal with this with your classmates in your discussion posts. Don't shoot somebody down. You can disagree. I disagree with my students a lot, but I give them the reasons why. But I'm not going to shoot them down. And I've had students that give answers that I don't agree with, but they provide a good case for why they take the position they do in their discussion posts. And I say, I feel where you're coming from, but here's what I, as professor, believe could be the outcome. I'm not Lord and master over what can the final outcome be, except in some things that are pretty standard. Okay. So anyway, diversity, teamwork. How are you going to work as teams when you're in this class? I already told you. Discussion posts. You're going to be supportive of each other, encouraging of each other, and that's what you're going to do. My job as professor, we get together with the admissions people, we get together with the advisors, the financial aid people, and we all work together as teammates. Mine is in the classroom, and also we have employment assistance through the career services that are offered. So we work as teams together to help you as students as you go through this college. Ethics, I can tell you, ethics is the beginning and the end of success. Always operate ethically. Unethical practices as a student result oftentimes in unethical professionals. Unethical professionals lose jobs and or end up someplace they don't want to go, like penitentiary or jail or something like that. So you don't want to. You want to be an ethical individual. And in our profession, especially law enforcement aspect of criminal justice, ethics is so important because we need to have good relationships with the community and operate on the ethics and the professional standard and professional responsibilities of your respective fields. And so these are very, very, very important issues. And then finally, information literacy, using credible resources, as we talked about, being able to research and find information in a timely fashion, and like I said, credible information. Remember I said no Wikipedia and other sources like that. So you'll have a chance to demonstrate each of these at some point in all the courses that you take. And you might even be realizing that you're doing them, but you're doing them. They're part of what the assignment's all about. So the attendance policy, I'm not going to talk about. You can take a look at that yourself. I do want to talk about the late assignment policy. The late assignment policy is very clear, and you can submit your assignment. It says up to 7 days, but be aware that each day you lose 10% of your grade. Each day, until finally you get to a point where it's 0. Now, before I get to the waiver part, I want to talk about online discussion posts so you understand this. Discussion posts made after the due date, after the due date for discussion posts in the current week module will not be accepted. Now, let me explain what that means. If you're late with your discussion post, you're going to lose points. But your discussion forum ends Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you have not submitted an initial post by that time, if you submit an initial post and a reply post on that Sunday or after that, it's going to be given a 0 because it's after the discussion forum is ended. Now, I'm going to give you one of my policies, and I think I'm probably the only one who does it, but I give you the benefit of the doubt. If your discussion post for initial post is submitted as late as Saturday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, and you submit a reply post that Sunday, you will get points taken off course for the late discussion post, starting with Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So you'll lose the points, 4 points for that. The point of the matter is this: you'll lose a point each day, and then your one Sunday, you'll lose 1 point, assuming that it meets all the other criteria. So if you submit them both on Sunday, no deal. All right? So that's it. Why do we do that? Because the discussion posts are in place of discussions about the various topics. And that's why we do that. Okay? So now let's get to here. It says instructors may waive the late penalty or time frame in case of extenuating circumstances. And who determines it? As determined by the faculty. So that's my role. How do I do it? I do it on a case-by-case basis. I do say this: as soon as you have a problem, communicate with me. One of the modes of communication I shared with you earlier: text, email me, or phone me. Those are the ways. Now, let me say this to you. If it was me and it was really a toughie, I would make sure I do texting first. If it was not a very, very urgent situation, or you're letting me know something is coming up, then you might have a problem. Now, let me say this to you. Here's what is not extenuating circumstances. I have a vacation that I planned, and I have to go on that vacation. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my money. You're also going to lose your points. And the reason being is because it is unfair to allow a person that's not an extenuating circumstance. And so we've had discussions as faculty about this very issue, because people should recognize and know how the schedules operate in their college in terms of planning those kind of things. And another thing, as I was telling somebody, I've taken trips where I go away and I take my laptop with me. Now, there are some places that you can't get internet, but most of the time you can. I will never penalize a person who is deployed or is in the reserves and is on duty for that time. I will not ever do that. That is unfair to them, because they're serving our country. Now, remember, we talked about ethics and integrity. Don't just use that, okay? So anyway, and I know you're not, so I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. And then please don't tell me somebody died and such a thing happened and say, I will give you a copy of the obituary. I don't want that. I want a letter from your doctor. I don't want that. We're college students here, you guys. You are anyway. And I'm not going to treat you like your kids, okay? I'm not going to require it. This is not a documentation requirement. Because I tell you the truth, it will catch up on you if you do that in some place. That's why I said always operate ethically, okay? And then I'm not going to read the rest of that. You can go over that yourself. Incomplete grade policy, you can look at it yourself. The academic college integrity policy, we've kind of covered that in the video, but you can take time to go over and look at that as well. Okay. So with that being said, let's take a quick look at what we have for this week. So again, here are the assignments. I already told you, read the module, and the module will tell you. Now, it says rewrite the preamble, and it says add anything you believe is missing and relevant to present-day society. Now, it doesn't say how many pages, but let me say this to you, good people. You're in college. It shouldn't be like a little short paragraph, 2 or 3 lines. It should at least be a page, at least. It doesn't say that, but remember, you're in college, and you also have to cover the issues that are in the rubric. And in order to properly do that, you are probably going to have at least a page, maybe more. And notice when it's due. If you click on this, oops, that's not what I wanted to show you. That's for me. What I wanted to show you is this. So if you click on the assignment, it tells you you got 80 possible points according to the rubric that I showed you and how it's broken down, and tell you when the due date is. That's what I wanted you to see. Okay, and then, of course, you know how to submit your assignments from there. All right, and then you have your discussion posts, which it tells you what the issue is, and we've already discussed the date. And then there's the other discussion post there, and I don't tell a due date on there, but in discussion posts it tells you what will happen in terms of submitting. And these are some of the people that already submitted it, so I'm going to back out of that so I don't look at them. But anyway, so discussion posts need to be submitted. Some of you already have gone forward on those. Very good. And then your live classroom, it tells you that it's due by the 7th, which is Sunday. So those are your assignments for the first week, and I've already kind of covered the details. Now, let's go back, and okay, we're kind of a little behind schedule, but bear with me here. Objectives. These are things that it tells you basically what your reading is for the week. And then here it is broken down. Constitution and Supreme Court is a section. I already told you about this. I told you about this and about that. So Constitution and Supreme Court, you can go over these and you can click on it and you will learn about it, and you will learn it in your course. You'll learn, first of all, just very briefly, that the government is divided into 3 sections. The legislative branch, which consists of Congress, which is the House and the Senate. The House consists of 435 members. The Senate consists of 100 members, 2 for each jurisdiction. And then executive branch, that's the everything that falls under the president. And then the judicial branch is everything that falls under the courts, from the district court in the U.S. District Court in the federal level to the Court of Appeals for the various circuits around the country to the highest court of the land, which is the United States Supreme Court. And then these are the Bill of Rights. You can click on this and you can see the Bill of Rights, and you will be aware that of the Bill of Rights, you're going to run into these a lot in this course. The 4th Amendment, the 5th Amendment, and the 6th Amendment. These are your core of the constitutional rights that we deal with here, okay? Some people always want to deal with the 2nd Amendment, and that's because of guns. But anyway, these are the core that will take you through the course, understanding search and seizure, interrogation, confessions, you have a right not to testify against yourself, right to counsel, right to jury in cases, except in juvenile cases, and those kind of things. But right to counsel is effective based on a famous case of Gideon versus Wainwright. And so anyway, that's just a little bit. And then it talks about the Supreme Court, which is 9 justices that are appointed by the president. They're not elected, they're for life, and they either serve it until they're impeached. I can't remember a Supreme Court justice has been impeached, Supreme Court justices are pretty free. For example, no matter what president selects them, they're free to, and they're take an oath to enforce the Constitution of the United States. And that's week 1. Okay. All right. So now let's go to, and then like I said, next week we'll get into the course project, Fourth Amendment project, because it doesn't start till next week. So now that is pretty much what I wanted to share with you. Now, let me go back to our classroom. And I want to say to each of you something, and let's see, it's 9:46. It might take me 20, maybe even 25 minutes to do this. But I want to explain something to you. Remember I said at the beginning of this, in the announcement, adversity is the springboard to success is my motto. It all started with me individually. I'm telling you about why I say that and why I'm an empathetic professor with my students. First of all, my career started in a direction of becoming what I am today, and then on the way becoming a lawyer and some other things. In 1957, when I was 7 years old, and my dad was murdered in our house by a guy who was actually my mother's. It turns out that he was her living boyfriend. And so this guy and my father got into a fight in the house. In the bedroom, there was a 7-year-old boy and 5 younger girls. These were my sisters. And the man took out a knife and stabbed my dad in the forehead. Now, I'll never forget it, guys, because I have a photographic memory. And so when he did that, he left out, ran out. The police came, took my dad's body away. I never forget him being carried past me with all the blood pouring down on his face and with the knife still stuck in his forehead. So anyway, a few days later, the guy shows back up in the house. Well, as it turned out, I would find out years later that it didn't make sense. I know he did this wrong, but the state nollied the case, nolli prosecute, which is a Latin phrase which means they didn't prosecute. And the reason they didn't prosecute is because they said there was not sufficient evidence, and that the one person who was a witness, who was the person who actually ran into the room and turned the lights on, was my mother. She said my dad was the aggressor and that the man was defending himself, but that was not true. My father was pinned in the corner, and the guy was on top of him and stabbed him. So at any rate, they wouldn't call us as witnesses, and so they dismissed the charges against him. And so the guy then began to live openly with my mother. It was no longer hidden, the relationship that they were having. And so we proceeded to live in the house with this man, and he was an abuser. We were children who witnessed firsthand this man commit domestic violence on my mother so often that the police were there. He would be taken away. She'd go back and get him, bring him back home, and it went on like that from 57 to 62. In 1962, we moved from the area we were living in Chicago, on the west side of Chicago, which by this time became gang infested, and I was the only boy. Well, let me tell you something that happened unique. The gangs decided at that time, the Vice Lords and Cobras were a big gang, and this was before drugs were included with gangs. they agreed that because they knew my situation, that I was not to be recruited by either gang, and that if anything went down, let me know and get me out of the area. And they did. But my mom still wanted to move us out. So we moved from that area on the west side to Gary, Indiana. Now, Gary is pretty rough now, but the area we moved into was a nice community with grass, little league, all kinds of things. It was called Terrytown. And so we moved there in 1962, in the summer of 62. And when we lived there, of course, by this time, I should say to you that my mother had a sixth child and then a seventh child. All 7 of them were girls. And so anyway, we moved the house in 1962 in the summer, and then we started school. During the course that we were living there, an aunt came, and the guy he wasn't violent because she was pretty rough. She carried a gun, and he didn't mess with her, and he didn't mess with my mom. But then she left to go back to Michigan where she lived in early May of 1963. And my mom had a restaurant with one of our cousins in downtown Gary. So we come to Memorial Day of 1963, which was May 30th, and my mom left me in charge of the house. My mom, I had a baby sister, and you see me closing my eyes because I'm looking at stuff through my photographic memory, that I was left in charge, and my mom left, the guy left with her, and that was that. So early the next morning, I woke up, and there was smoke in the house, and I opened the door to get the smoke out, opened up the oven, and there was some barbecue that was left in there, and that barbecue was smoking and burning. Well, the guy ended up, I saw the car pull away out of the driveway. It was just before daylight. And he didn't see me. I know he didn't because he probably would have come back in. I would find out later that he turned on the gas, and it was to kill us in the house. Well, I did not know at that time that in that car was my mother in the back seat, and he had attacked around the corner from the house and stabbed her multiple times. Well, later that day came about, and 2 policemen showed up at the house, and they announced that my mother had been found dead, bled to death in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago. I went into a rage and started screaming out, "Scott, Scott!" Well, that was the guy's name. I hadn't said that name, by the way, for years and years and years. Not because I couldn't. It was just hard for me to say his name, but I am writing a book about it and written articles and testified about it and all those things. But anyway, so the police took us kids. And by the way, my baby sister, she still had her blankie. She was not even quite, she was a little over a year old, but she, she didn't really get to know my mother. So we moved, back to Chicago, all 8 of us, and lived in the south side of Chicago with another aunt. And this aunt didn't want us there, and they were trying to discuss splitting us up and sending us off to different places. But my other aunt, remember the one I told you that came and stayed with us from Michigan? She came back and said she's not having that, and that she was going to take all 8 of us. And she and her husband ended up having a house built in an area called Maple Park, which is in the south side of Chicago, Morgan Park, where we moved into in 1964 in the summer. It was at that time that it was brought to my attention that Scott, who committed the murder of my dad and my mother, had pled guilty, and that they would sentence him to 10 years. Now, at that time, 10 meant 5. And then I was told that for good behavior, he would end up serving 3 fingers and a half years. And ultimately, that's what he ended up doing. I was a troubled kid, and when I get troubled, I ask questions. And it led me so much to asking that finally someone told me, they said, Richard, that's just the way it is. I said, what do you mean that's just the way it is? They said, that's the way the criminal justice system operates. And I said, well, who's responsible for this? They said, well, these people called lawyers or attorneys. So I said, I want to find out about that. So I went to school. I was in 8th grade at that time, and asked the librarian if we had any books on attorneys or lawyers. She said, we have just one. And I checked the book out, took it home, read it from cover to cover, and anybody I met after that, I said, my name is Richard Wright, and I'm going to be a lawyer. And so I started on my journey. And I had relatives, including an aunt that didn't want us at her house. She tried to discourage me. She told me I didn't have what it took. But I'm one of these people, and I teach my students this. Don't respond to the person. Respond with action. Just do it, like you said. And actions speak louder than words. And so I'm going to put a postscript in this a little while with that aunt that tried to discourage me. And so here's what happened. So I proceeded to be active in the community at the church. I met people in the community. I was involved in the youth group at the church. And by the way, my aunt and uncle, they wanted to adopt all of us, but I didn't want to be adopted. You know why? Because I wanted to keep the name to carry on for my dad. And so my uncle and I were at odds constantly. I didn't even like him. I didn't disrespect him, but I didn't like him. And because of that, I couldn't get a driver's license because they had to sign for it. And there was so many other things that I couldn't do because I stood my ground. But I took a job as a paper boy. And then I ended up working at McDonald's after school as well. I was in sports at school for a while, but I had to drop out of that to do these jobs. So anyway, I ended up finding myself in a situation where I would discover later that the man who was my uncle in that house actually went through my sisters. Yes, you know what I'm talking about. Sexual abuse. And there was never any criminal cases or none of that stuff. He and my aunt would pull guns, and we would be victims there. Nobody got shot, but a gun went off one time, and I was able to get out of the house. The bottom line was it was a pretty rocky situation even then. So I was going to school in high school at this time, and I continued going through high school. And while I was in high school, I was told by a few counselors that my career path was, I wanted to go to the FBI and then get my degree by going to Washington and working my way. But at that time, when I applied to the FBI, I was denied opportunity. I would find out years and years later the reason why is because at that time, J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI, was rejecting minorities and females. So later on, the FBI tried to recruit me, but I said no deal. I'm already. This was years later after I got my law degree. So anyway, back to the time. So I met some friends of mine, and I told my aunt. I said, oh, by the way, I would find out years and years later, when I was like 34 years old, practicing lawyer, that my aunt and uncle illegally adopted me without my knowledge, my high school diploma, and when I got married to my first wife, I had the name Richard Wright. But my name wasn't Wright, it was Collins, and I didn't know that until I went to try to get a birth certificate when I was 35 years old, and then I found out what happened. Well, I got it fixed later because I was adopted a second time, but that's another part of my story. But at any rate, what happened is that while I was living there, the church offered to send me to college. All my aunt and uncle had to do was sign. He said, I'm not doing it. And you know why, I told you. And I said, okay. I says, I'm moving out when I graduated. I graduated when I was 19 because my birthday is in May and graduation is June. So really it was been 18, but I had turned 19. And then a couple of my friends that I met, their mom and dad let me come and live with them. In the meantime, I registered for classes at a junior college at night. And when I started that, I was working 40. I got a job, which my friend had a family member. My friend's mother had a friend who worked as a secretary in a big law firm in downtown Chicago. She got me a job to work in the mailroom as a messenger. And I began working in that law firm. I didn't have a car. I was on the L and the bus. And then I registered for classes at night at the City College, which is called Harold Washington. Now it was Loop College then, carrying a full load. But I had to carry these big books. Remember, we didn't have digital stuff. So I studied, guys, on the train. I studied anywhere I could find. I stayed on the honor roll and dean's list. In the meantime, I got married after my first year in 1970, and then 71, and then 72. 2 kids came. They were both girls. And so I ended up finding myself in a situation where I was working 40 hours a week and taking a full load of classes. I ended up involved in student activities. How you do that? I did. I became vice president of the evening student government, but I squeezed it because you know how, guys? I did this thing that we try to stress to you, time management. I managed my time and balanced it. It wasn't easy. It was extremely difficult. And so anyway, the point of the matter is that I knew what I wanted to do. So then I ended up leaving there and going to a 4-year institution called Roosevelt University, where I got accepted, matriculated there as a full-time student, continued working in the law firm. In the meantime, the law firm moved me from a messenger to a file clerk to a law librarian, and then they found out I knew how to do research, and they made me a law clerk. You call that today a paralegal. And so I used to go to court with the lawyers. I used to go to closings and real estate deals. I'd go to corporate deals, all that kind of stuff. They did some criminal stuff, and I went to court with them. I went to visit inmates with them in prison and things like that. I did all of those things. So I was introduced to this. In the meantime, it came time for me. And by the way, I stayed on the honor roll and dean's list when I was at Roosevelt University as well, balancing that with raising these 2 kids. And so I found myself in a situation where it's time for me to select law school. Well, I already knew where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Northwestern University School of Law, and I was advised that it was a difficult thing that I was undertaking, and that I might run into some barriers. Well, I already had enough barriers in my life, and this is just one more thing. But I was determined that I was going to go to this school. So the advice that was given to me was to apply to 3 law schools. I said, I'm not doing that. I wasn't cocky. I wasn't arrogant. I was just confident that I could do this thing. So I submitted my application to Northwestern, took the LSAT, which I didn't do the best in, but I wrote a lot of information to explain to them, offsetting. They saw my transcripts. They saw I was an excellent student. They saw that I worked hard. And I also provided details about what I went through in my childhood. The package was extremely thick. It wasn't just the application, but it was supporting information, details, documents, writing samples, and other things like that, letters of recommendation, and all of those things. So the school said that they didn't do interviews with students because they had thousands of people. I mean, they were applying for 250 seats. Actually, they were admitting, they accepted 300, but about 250 is what they always shot for. So I ended up getting a message, rare call, could I come down for an interview to the law school? And I did. And I sat in a room with these 4 people, and they fired questions for about an hour, and I answered their questions. And then they adjourned, and they came back and they said, well, we don't make offers like, in this kind of scenario, but we like what we have seen. We've listened to you intensely, and we do want to say this, that what we are going to do is we're going to send you some correspondence in the next few weeks, and the correspondence will be something that you like. Well, that was their way of just telling me, informing me that I had been accepted. And shortly after that, within 2 to 3 weeks, I got a letter being accepted into the law school. So that summer, I took the time, my job let me do it, to go and participate in a 6-week program to help raise monies that help pay my tuition at the law school. Because trust me, very, 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 very expensive venture going to law school. And then you try to look at Northwestern, it was well worth it, but it was a very expensive venture. So while I was there, I began taking the classes, and in '75, that August, I discovered and was told that I could not work because the first year of law school is so involved, and they said they won't accept a student who works. They wanted me to give all of my time. So my spouse, who I was married to at that time, she had graduated also at the same time I graduated from Roosevelt in June of '75 with a degree in education, and she got a job as a teacher with Chicago Public Schools. So that's good. However, what happened is that as I was going through my classes in the first semester, the teachers went on strike. They had never had a strike or hadn't had one in a long time. Guess what that meant? No income. Guess what that did? That put pressures on me. So, I mean, it was so bad, guys, that what happened is that we ran out of money and we couldn't pay things like the electric bill. Guys, I studied by candlelight. We took the 2 kids and sent them to their grandmother's house, my wife's mother's house, and we ate cans of beans. We ate cold soup. It was a challenge. We ate dry cereal. We couldn't really have milk because of the fact that, and if we did, we had the little cartons. We had to drink it and eat it because we didn't have any way of storing it. The bottom line, it was a challenge. But guess what? I continued on struggling until finally it just got too heavy for me. And I went to one of my professors, and I told her, I said, Professor Hughes, that was her name, Joyce Hughes, I says, I think I'm going to have to take a leave of absence because of my problem. She says, before you do that, Wright, I want you to come to my office and talk to me. So I did. I went to her office and talked to her. And she sat me down, and she stood in front of the door, and she says, I'm not letting you out of here until you decide that you're going to stick it out. I will help you. I will stand with you. If we need to get tutoring for you, we will do that. I can't help you financially, but she says, but you can weather this storm. So, long story short, I did. I graduated in 3 years, 1978. But let me go back. While I was in the law school, and my grades started suffering because of that, I went on what they call probation, which meant that I was about to be put out. And they knew what was going on with me, but they still my grades. So then I met with all of my professors and said to them, hey, if I do extra work, I'll do whatever. And guess what? I did, and I made it through. While I was there, one of my instructors was what we call an adjunct professor, or he was a visiting professor, but he was also a practicing attorney. He was a criminal defense lawyer, top one in Chicago. R. Eugene Pencham was his name. He was like on the level of a Johnny Cochran, if those of you who know that name, who was O.J.'s attorney. In fact, it was because of him I ended up meeting Johnny, but that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, I ended up having him to find out about me in details, not just as a student. He had a son who was in the class in front of me, and he invited me to go to his house along with several other young law students, and we sat around, and R. Eugene Pincham, who I call Judge because later he became a judge, drilled us on trial techniques as it comes to the law in the criminal area. So after everybody left, I was left with him. I said, can I ask you some questions that I want to just talk to you about? And I explained to him what I had come through. He says, oh my God, you need closure. So what he did was he took me down to the criminal courts building in Chicago and took me to the lower level and had them to pull the files from what happened with my father's case and my mother's case, and I have those to this day. And then he sat down and explained something. And then he said something very important to me that stuck with me. He said, Richard, he says, listen to me. You probably, and I don't know this, he says, have a tendency to want to lock people up and prosecute. So I said, no, I haven't reached that stage. I said, because when I was studying political science, I learned criminal justice system and how there were some injustices and how there were things that didn't go correctly. And then also I was in Cook County, so I paid attention to what was going on with the police departments and things like there was some, how should I say, riots that took place, all kinds of things that were taking place. I learned about all of that. So I told him no. He said, well, I want to encourage you to become a criminal defense lawyer. He said, now you will have to defend murderers. He says, but you will learn the system. And I took him up on that. And I began to do that. So when I graduated, the day that I graduated, by the way, I was making my list out of people to invite to my graduation. The first person I invited was, remember that aunt I told you who tried to discourage me? Not the one I lived with later, but the one who told me I didn't have what it took. She got the first invitation. When she got there, that was the first time in years that she spoke highly of me. She spoke with Judge Pincham, and Judge Pincham said, that's your aunt? I've been knowing her for years. He says, I am sorry to hear that's your aunt. He says, and I'm sorry what I'm going to have to say. Said it in kind of an expletive form about what my aunt was and how she was in relationship with dealing with him and others in the community. So I just smiled. So anyway, he went over to her and told her, you should be proud of him. This young man's going to go places. So as it was, she bragged about me and all of that, and I just stood there, So at any rate, went on from there, went back and worked at the law firm, and began working took the bar, did all right, and ended up working at the law firm in corporate law. But I didn't want to just do corporate law. You know what I wanted to do? Criminal law. So, and not the minimal amount they were doing. So I decided I would leave the law firm and start working with some other lawyers, which I didn't like their ethic. So I started my own law practice. And my law practice began to grow because I ended up meeting someone back when I was 14 who became a friend, and I asked her to be my mother, and she ended up becoming a good close friend and was in my life throughout college and law school. And she was in radio and television in Chicago. And so I learned about radio and television with her. Well, I developed the idea with her that I would take my legal knowledge and produce a call-in talk show called Know Your Rights, which was WRIGHTS, where people would call in and ask various legal questions. And I started doing that on various radio stations. I ended up acquiring the phone number for my office of 974-4487, which spelled WRIGHTS. So I was doing pretty good. In the meantime, by the way, 91 to 93, digressing a little bit, I went to seminary and Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, where I studied for a Master of Arts in Religion, and I completed all the requirements except I owe them a paper, and even to this day, I never did. That's why I wrote pending in there, because I didn't really get the degree, but it was Master of Arts in Religion pending, Urban Ministries. So I already got everything I needed. So anyway, I proceeded to practice law as a criminal defense lawyer and hiring other people to do my other stuff and doing the radio show. In the meantime, I became a minister and started preaching the gospel as well. So in 93 is when I completed my ministerial stuff for the Master of Arts Religion, with the exception of the paper at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. So here I am, this lawyer, and they started calling me the preaching lawyer. I was very good with jurors because of my photographic memory and because of my ability to tell a story and communicate, as you can tell already. And I did real well with juries. I won over many a juries, and I actually got jurors who were able to ask for my business card after the case was over, and they would have people that they knew they would refer to me. Even the law enforcement people that I would catch impeaching them on the stand, catching them in inaccuracies, they liked it the way I was, and I ended up becoming a lawyer for many of them. So I went on for several years representing individuals. And I ran into some problems that I went through and found myself where I ended up going through and having problems where I just couldn't stay with this first person. And so I ended up getting a divorce, and then I ended up, by the time I got the divorce, we had a third child, which she was born when I graduated from law school. So she came after that. I graduated in June of '78. She came in October. So anyway, we ended up going our separate way and so forth and so on. And then I ended up finding myself in a situation where I ended up marrying a second person, had one more child, a girl. And then I found out that were a woman, and my former pastor were doing their thing, and so I ended up leaving that situation. And then I met a young lady that I started spending time with in '94, and we got married in '94, July the 28th, and we are now celebrating 25 years of marriage as of July the 28th. And she and I have 4 kids that you see. If you look at my picture, you see them on there. So I've been through a lot, people. So anyway, I found myself deciding in 2000, actually, I'm done with law. I ran a janitorial company. I ended up teaching special education, and then I started doing closings for title companies. Well, that went on until finally 2011, when someone told me about this school called Rasmussen College. I never heard of it. And so I did my research and found out about it, and I was offered a job to teach business law residentially, people, and I got accepted for the job and began teaching that. And so as it was, they announced that they were going to be changing some things in the college. Well, I quickly let the dean know that I was not a business law person, even though I had studied it, but that I was really a criminal justice person. And so I began operating as an adjunct professor or part-time professor, and so it was a challenge because my contract was renegotiated every quarter, and sometimes I had hardly any money coming in from teaching because they would give the full-time professors the teaching sessions first. So anyway, came an opening for a job in the college as state program coordinator of Illinois, covering the 4 colleges in Illinois: Romeoville, Tinley Park, Mokina, Tinley Park is one campus, Aurora, and then Rockford. And I applied for that job, and I got the job. Well, after that, I began teaching 3 classes, and then finally in 2015, they ended up changing that and turned me into a full-time professor teaching online, which, by the way, I had to learn the online methods for teaching, and I am very adept at it. And because, as you know already, a challenge is something that I don't turn away. So I ended up beginning to teach many of students that continue even to this day to follow me and reach out to me in various ways, in Facebook, on LinkedIn, ask me to write letters of recommendation, and all those kinds of things. So I form and maintain relationships with the students that I had, and I found myself becoming an associate professor, and then assistant professor, and now I'm full professor, Dr. Richard Wright. And so many of you in this class already know this story because you've had me for other classes. I have a good relationship with my students. I also have had some battles with my students, but when the dust all settled, they understood where I was coming from, because my goal is to provide 3 tiers: educational, ethical, and professional criminal justice individuals. And that's the way I want you to perform in school, and that's my standard that I set for you. And so that is the story about why adversity is the springboard to success, and why I will stay forever doing whatever it takes to help you guys to be successful. But remember, it's a 2-part thing. I'll offer it, but you got to step up to the plate too. You got to bring something to the table as well. What do? I said, put your hard work in. I know you're going to have challenges. I have had students throughout the years I've been teaching who had major, major challenges, such as losing loved ones, losing a father or either a spouse or even a child, getting very sick, being diagnosed with cancer or other kinds of illnesses. I had a couple students who were homeless, and they were studying in their cars and using Wi-Fi at places like McDonald's and Panera and all these different kind of places. The bottom line is that I still work and help, but I have to know it is, and we can work together, and it's a team thing. My professionalism and abilities to want to teach you and your ability to want to learn, put that together, that in Dean's List and a successful career in whatever you achieve. So with that, I'm going to say this to you. The word that I'm looking for is adversity. That's the word that I'm going to accept to give you your points. And so with that, I'm going to say good night. Thank you for being patient. We went a little longer, but it won't be this long at this point. But I wanted you to understand so that you know who it is that you have that is teaching you. I've never met many of you face to face, but you know, my students are so important to me, and that's the way it is. So I'm going to say good night to you. Have a great week. Enjoy your first week, and you know what to do if you need me. And I will see you hopefully next Monday at 8:30, where we'll do an hour-long lecture, and then we'll cover materials in that. So I'm going to say good night to you and end this session.